Rise. I feel like out of every map in the zombie saga, Rise is probably the most forgettable. Some maps are infamously bad, and that's why they're still remembered, but Rise was so neutral that it was left in the ditch and is often forgotten about in conversation. So today, I want to take a look at Rise and see what happened, what went wrong, and if Rise is really as bad as people say. So, the selling point for Rise was its verticality, and while cool at times, it's really arbitrary more than anything. I feel like the verticality aspect really can't be sold without a ground floor. Rise takes place in a constant fog, below you and above you. I get it's cool, but at some point there should be a perspective of height. As of right now, the map just kinda seems like it's floating in a void, similar to Revelations. Don't tell me this building is 70 stories, show me it is. Now I'm not asking every floor to be accessible, but for a good example is the Siege of Shanghai building in Battlefield 4. You can either exist on the ground floor or on the top floor, and standing on both sides and looking at the other really gives you a sense of scale. I've always imagined sitting on the top of the building and looking down at a teammate training zombies and just raining everything down on them. So the fact that we don't have that perspective of at least being able to see the ground, I think is kind of backwards for the goals they had in mind. Now I admit that standing on the tops of buildings is very cool. The skybox is probably one of the best in zombies, period. However, the rest of the map on the lower floors is actually quite disgusting. It's actually kind of vomit colored, like there's some browns and pink, yuck. I'm not sure why they made this decision, as the rooftops are some of the best spaces visually versus everything else being the worst. A really missed opportunity on this map is platforming. There's a little bit here and there, but it never goes all the way. It's normally just one jump or something. There's never anything committing when it comes to platforming. Like, I don't know, imagine there's a bridge that crumbles with each step you take, so you can only try it once around, but getting to the end of that bridge is the Pack-a-Punch or something, I don't know. I feel like an awesome platforming section somewhere outside of custom zombies would be a great addition to the Treyarch lineup. That isn't to say I don't appreciate the sections where there is some, because it really makes you actively engage with your movements. Even in some of the better training spots in this map, there is some sort of engagement involved. But again, I do wish there was some better commitment to it. Probably one of the better aspects of the map is the trample steam. This is a pretty good shortcut tool for the map, or can be sometimes used as a defense tool. Probably some of my favorite ones are the ones that go between the two buildings. Just being flung across that gap is kinda scary for your first couple times doing it, but once you master it, it feels great because the game doesn't outright tell you, hey, I bet you could go across this gap right here. There's just these little mattresses that kind of give you an idea of where to go, but it is definitely one of those things that you feel like you discovered yourself, which I really like. Again, with the platforming, I feel like they could have done it a little bit more with it. While the trample steam can be used as a shortcut, there's never a place that can exclusively be only accessed by the trample steam. Again, what if a place like the best training spot on the map, or a wonder weapon part, or something can only be obtained by being flung over somewhere? Like on Toten, that one island with a golden Pack-a-Punch, except you can stay there as long as you want. So yeah, there is a lot of creativity you can use with the trample steam, but again, there is never a full commitment to it. However, probably my favorite part of the map is its wonder weapon. A true league ahead of its predecessor, the jet gun. The Schleyer is really a good wonder weapon. Pre-patch, it infamously did infinite damage, but even now that it doesn't, it's still really good. A well-placed shot can annihilate a horde. There is some risk versus reward with it, as the goop it shoots is slippery, and if a shot is misplaced, it can cause you to fall off the map. While it's not my favorite wonder weapon, I do like that it has a high risk versus reward factor. The Schleyer is so good that it can lead to pretty easy high rounds. A combination of its good horde clearing abilities and a max ammo every 5 rounds, Means if you want to practice getting better at high rounds, this is probably the place to do it. There is a room for every playstyle. If you want to get better at figure 8 trains, banana loops, traditional trains, or just camping, there is a room somewhere that you can get better at that playstyle. And again, with the gaps and slopes of the map, there isn't too many boring places on the map to train. To also add to the ease is some pretty good wall weapons. The PDW, the SVU, and the AN94 are really good weapons to the point where there isn't really a point to hitting the mystery box. Which I guess is a good thing because the box chances for good guns in this map is for some reason really low. Like the chance of getting the Mark II is like what, 0.2% or something like that if I remember correctly. So maybe it is a good thing that there's an AN94 and a Sliquifier, both really easy to get. The final thing to add to the ease is if you get 100% accuracy on special rounds, you can get a free perk. Meaning you can reasonably get all the perks on the map fairly easily. Let's talk about that special round for a second. So let's do a quick count. How many times have the Nova Crawlers been in zombies so far? Kino's the first, then 5, the third on Moon. So for some reason on Die Rise, we have Nova Crawlers again, but wait a minute.
They fly now? They fly now!
So these jumping jacks are really just not it, man. Sure, the free perk is nice, and thank God they aren't a part of normal rounds, but I just don't get what these guys are. They're like the Fred versions of Nova Crawlers. I can't even put into words why I don't like them. I just don't, and I don't think a lot of the zombies community likes them either. In fact, one of the reasons the free perk might be a detriment is because of the new perk they added in this map. Who's Who is somehow Tombstone, but even worse. So the premise sounds not too bad. When you down, you can get a second chance to go and revive yourself, and not lose quick revive. The problem is when you put it into practice. So for some inconceivable reason, you get the starting pistol. Yep, if you're on round 20 plus, good luck, good luck. All you have is that stupid starting pistol and nothing else. While zombies chase you, by the way, the change here is very simple. Just make it so that you spawn in with your weapons you already had. Another thing is if you get a terrible spawn. Because of Die Rise's verticality, you can't really traverse the map very well. So if your body is above your ghost, you might not be able to get back, period. The only time Who's Who comes in handy is if you're dicking around and accidentally fall off the map or down from fall damage or something. I really seriously don't like this perk, and I'm thankful it never ever came back ever again. And you know what perk would help out though? PhD. For some ungodly reason, they put PhD in Die Rise, but you can't buy it. A good idea here was to have teased it and then, you know, make it accessible. And in fact, there is a mechanic that you could have made very easily work out. There is an elevator key in the hallway that the elevator takes you to. When you place it on this panel, it makes the elevator go back up. Now imagine if it went back up, but it stopped at the PhD floor. Then, as soon as you got off the elevator would leave so that you had to buy the perk, and it would mitigate your fall damage. This would be a great lesson for players that have never played Black Ops 1 Zombies and wanted to see how this new perk worked. I guess the lemonade from this is that you can't even buy PhD from the machine. Nothing happens when you walk up to it if you were to use NoClip to get here. But still, when this Treyarch stuff was going on, I am actually not forgiving of this tease. Just this few brief frames of seeing PhD is just everything wrong with Die Rise and what it's represented by. There is greatness, but only for a few brief moments, and then it's back to normal Die Rise. Finally, a map to me is only as good as an Easter egg, and the Die Rise Easter egg I am actually once again quite unforgiving with. You see, even in an Easter egg that isn't soloable, in most cases you are able to do at least some portion of it. Like in Shadows of Evil, you can basically do everything except the final step. Even in Transit, you can do most of the steps solo. In fact, if you're a crackhead, you can do Richtofen side solo. In Mob of the Dead, you can also do every step except the last one. Even in Buried, you can do some of the Easter eggs solo, but eventually with all of these, you have to have 4 players at some point. But if you wanted to practice or just goof around, you could do some of the steps as well. Now, a big flaw with Die Rise, Shangri-La, and Ascension is that you basically need 4 players to do the entire thing. This is a terrible decision, and thank God that every Easter egg after Shadows of Evil has been soloable. I'm not actually quite sure why 4-player Easter eggs were a thing in the first place. Going into a public match in zombies is such a task on its own, so trying to coordinate doing a bunch of complicated tasks, it's not really gonna happen. So really, it needs to be 3 other people that you know want to play zombies at the same time. Also, given that Call of the Dead created a solo version of the Easter egg, I don't understand why every map from there on out required multiple players. So okay, let's go over what this Easter egg actually is. Like we went over in Transit, there are actually 2 Easter eggs. A Maxis version and a Richthofen version, and they're kind of battling out, which is thematically pretty cool, but once again executed very poorly. So the first step right off the bat requires 4 players. There are 4 golden symbols that are inside elevators, so already we are in yikes territory. This step is tedious because you never know when a teammate will go, no, my elevator is going up, no, kind of thing. And the fact that it requires 4 people at the same time is not a good decision. Now this next step I actually like, and what you have to do is get a sniper and shoot some balls out of the dragon's mouth. Pretty cool, and then those balls will be in the statues in the spawn room. From here is where the Maxis Richthofen split decision is made. For Richthofen, you can take the Schleyer and shoot the balls a bunch of times. For Maxis, you need to kill a bunch of zombies in the Buddha room. Back to Richthofen, you need every player to place a trampoline on the golden symbol facing the radio tower. Back to Maxis, you need the upgraded ballistic knights and revive a downed player in the Buddha room. What is this Easter egg? Then 2 specific characters must pick up the statues. God forbid if you are Stuhlinger or Russman. But this is only because this step can bug out, so is this required or not? I don't know. The next step, I don't know, but here's a screenshot of the step. You don't have to read it, but there you go. Why do these need to be done with 4 players? Is it easier to program? I'm confused. The final step is some mahjong nonsense that I don't understand and can't understand because it requires 4 players, and without PlayStation communities, I can't LFG people to do it with me. Do you see the problem here? Die Rise's Easter egg and the map as a whole is textbook filler. Just like in Nuketown, what do you learn from the story-wise in Die Rise? Would anything really have changed if you just played Transit and skipped straight to Buried? Not only is it a filler map in terms of story, but also in terms of content. There are 2 entire sections of the map I can think of right off the bat that can be removed from the map and no one would bat an eye. The first is the lowest floor where the Schleyer buildable is. There's an entire maze back there with nothing in it. It's really only there to mess with people that miss the Buddha room jump. But most egregiously of all is an area below the dragon roof. What is this? What is the point? Why is this here? It's just a way to mess with you if you have to access that one elevator in the corner because Pack-a-Punch decides to be there or something. So not only that, but there's a ton of useless doors. Like, why is this a thing? You can very easily go from one side of a door to another in just seconds. And sometimes, like near the power room, there are 2 doors that are practically right next to each other and it connects to the same hallway, and what is this? It's things like this why I'm very unforgiving of Die Rise, because it inflates itself to seem larger than it actually is. Think of it like this. What is the space that is there in Die Rise, and what is the space you actually use in Die Rise? For me, there are a lot of instances where I'll wander into an area and be like, oh, this area I haven't seen before, and then immediately dismiss it because there's nothing there. So I think we covered a lot of things here, but the last thing I'll go over is the elevators. First off, it is bullshit that the elevator with Pack-a-Punch can leave while your weapon's in there, but also, the elevators, they receive a lot of criticism because it cannot be controlled like the bus. And yes, while that is true, I will play devil's advocate and say that there's only one bus to take you around the entirety of Transit, but there are always multiple elevators to take you to various places. To take you from the power area to the dragon roof, there are 3 elevators, and from the trampoline room to the spawn room, there are 2 elevators. So you aren't waiting forever like in Transit, but I can see why the agitation is there. But it's still very annoying, just not as much as Transit. Plus, when waiting for elevators, at least you don't have denizens. So overall, Die Rise is a map that tries to be many things but fails in pretty much all aspects. There are some good things for a casual player, but any attempts at appealing to the hardcore fall flat on its face. The map has a ton of useless areas with no reason to visit. I give Die Rise a 4 out of 10 E tier.
We tell a bird way around the world, 3 strange men and a hillbilly girl, fighting to survive against the horde of zombies. Watch that his backs to keep the minions off. We're gonna fight to the will to survive. We're gonna kill them all in Die Rise.